Good morning, Saitlanders. How are you? I'm so worked up over something that I read on the news feed that I'm struggling to compose myself to make this video, but really it shouldn't be. Let me tell you what it is. It's about how load shedding is going to end within 12 to 18 months. This is another person saying it, over and above the president, over and above old Boepens himself. What's his name? I've done business with him. He wouldn't remember, but no, it was a sticky matter because they didn't want to pay. They thought that payment shouldn't be part of the deal. They wanted the services, but not to pay for them. Right, some big services too. Maybe I'll make a video about it one day. What's his name, man? The Minister of Minerals and Energy, the Secretary General of the ANC. His wife is one of the directors of Hitachi, South Africa. Hitachi Heavy Industries. That giant of an engineer that she is. That intellectual giant. And Hitachi Heavy Industries is largely owned by Chancellor House, which is the ANC's investment vehicle. These oaks are scamless. But the real topic of this video is, I did a video which you might have seen already, whose title begins, Argumentum a Minore ad Maius, which means arguing a point by illustrating the principle or principles with examples that are much smaller than the real subject. So for instance, this comes to mind, but it may not be a very good illustration, but off the cuff, off the top of my head. Imagine in the old days, a couple getting a divorce when it was difficult and it had to be heard by a magistrate. Husband wants the divorce, wife doesn't, she's contesting it. And the magistrate says, "Why are you so unhappy? It appears to me that generally speaking things are not too bad." And the husband says, "Well, my wife never cooks. She promised that she would cook before we got married, and she's never cooked. Imagine, Your Honor, eating only cereal and sandwiches, cold food, 365 days of the year, and takeaways and so on. It's only one thing, Your Honor, but gives you an idea of how things are in the household." That might be a poor example on my part, but I made that video, and now this video will be entitled, its title will begin with the same thing. Because there are many people in South Africa who might look at South Africa and say, "What's all the fuss about?" And unless people like Saitlanders say, "Well, did you know that there were 40 farm murders last year? And as a percentage of the certain number of commercial farmers in South Africa," not farm murders, farmers murdered. "And as a percentage of the commercial farmers of South Africa, that works out to an intentional homicide rate, as the United Nations calls it, of 184 per 100,000 per year. Whereas the overall death rate in South Africa is whatever it is. It's about 37 per 100,000 per year. And then, of course, people are shocked and amazed, and they get a different idea. Likewise, when we say to them that the organization POWA, People Opposed to Women's Abuse, claims, it's a liberal organization, claims that one in every three, how did they put it? 1 in every 3. So 33.33%. I think that was how they put it. Or 30 out of 100 or 35 out of 100. Somewhere there. I haven't looked up the figure or the report for 5 or 6 years. Claims that 1 in every 3, let's say, women in South Africa will be raped at least once in her life. If you say that to a female journalist from overseas, it impresses them. It makes an impression upon them. They start to see your side of the story. Yesterday's video was about the Avbob funeral parlor or mortuary chiller that, they had no electricity, and there was a body in there of the woman who was interviewed by Report, a body of her mother, I should say. And so it rotted because they didn't have diesel for the standby generator, and the power went down. We were going through stage 8 all of last week. They say stage 6, but it's false. You can look it up yourself. There's a formula, Eskom's formula, a formula belonging to Eskom, according to which they work it out. And you can go and see for yourself. When it's 12 hours a day, it means that it's stage 8. Anyway, so I use that as the case in point for the argumentum ad minore, a minore ad Maius. And today's example is even more egregious. This comes from a month ago. I don't know if you remember, I had problems with my computer. The drives filled up. And so for about a week, I couldn't work. I had to wait for Piero, you all know Piero, to come back from holiday to give me the right advice without me having to take it in at great expense, driving 5 hours return to Bloemfontein. And so I didn't mention this then. I didn't produce a video about it then. The moment was sort of lost and other things happened. Then it was Christmas, then it was New Year. Right. So, 13th of December 2022 on News 24 by one Karen Smith. That's Karen with a C and an I. Smith. Aviation experts, pilots, raise concern after SAA air traffic control communication breakdown. Heavens above. According to ATNS, that's air traffic, what? It has a number of operational contingency plans that may be operationalized, not activated, at any given time, depending on the levels of service disruptions or risks identified. A breakdown in this is now 4 words in capital letters, it's a system. Controller pilot data link communications over a vast ocean area for which South Africa is responsible has been restored. Okay, so a breakdown has been restored, according to South Africa's Air Traffic and Navigation Services, ATNS. Although the breakdown in an air traffic control communications link with pilots in a vast ocean area for which South Africa is responsible has been restored, aviation experts and pilots caution that the incident still raises serious concerns. This follows a failure of the CPDLC service that took place on the 6th of December over a huge area of airspace over the ocean to the south of Africa and extending all the way to Antarctica. Now, this is relatively petty. It is relatively minor. And we should perhaps not make that much of a fuss about it. Perhaps we shouldn't overdo these things. Perhaps we shouldn't exaggerate our judgment and condemnation of the new South Africa Rainbow Nation at every blooming turn. Perhaps we should display some long-suffering and tolerance, and indeed Christian charity. The reason why I mention this, not to make a mountain out of a molehill, is because it comes on top of the announcement, was it 4 months ago, that the pilot who almost crashed the 747 or whatever it was, jumbo jet, the Boeing jet, 2 years ago. Do you remember that story? The guy did absolutely everything wrong, and he had to be rescued by another pilot pulling back on the stick. Well, that guy has now been appointed the head of training at South African Airways. And not to mistakenly conflate air traffic and navigation systems with Airports Company of South Africa, with South African Airways, but you and I both know that those were once a coherent entity. They were different spheres of operation, but interlinked and working well together. And therefore, I put it to you that it's not entirely unfair to say that when you consider that they're getting blackouts across great swathes of territory, that South African Airways is now kaput, that the training, and we're going to get onto a story, is an absolute shambles. You're looking at something that is an entity made of constituent parts. It's the Big and Diggy. It's the Steel Bird. It's those guys. And they are in the same solar system. And I put it to you that that solar system is shaky. I just want to see if I can find, I'm not going to keep you kind of hanging on here while I do my own thing forever, but there is a related article that I'd like to see if I can find, and if I can't, I'm just going to tell you a story of my personal experience, or no, of my father's experience. I can't find it. Doesn't matter. My dad, he's elderly now, was once, there we go, I have found the story. My dad was once a legendary fisherman. Spinning, he would spin that way, not like that. For shad, elf, at Tweenie ledges, not only, but that stretch between the acid pipe and all the way to Reunion. And he was a superb cray fisherman, and he was a very good ski boat fisherman. He won, he had South African records fishing from the ski boat. And one day, I was, a friend and I had the idea that we would hitchhike to through Africa, Cape to Cairo sort of style. And my friend let me down. He fell in love. And so I had to do it by myself. And this was in 1990, geez, man, how old would I have been? 22. 1993. So I put my backpack and everything together. I had practically no money. Maybe 1,000 rand or something, I don't know. And I went down to King Sports in Durban, when King Sports in between West Street and Smith Street was a big shop. Multiple stores. And I had multiple stories and floors, stores. And I went to the fishing department, and I walked up to the counter, and a guy who I didn't immediately recognize, called Gary Savage, helped me. And within seconds, man, he said to me, "Hey, don't I know you?" I said, "I don't think so." He said, "What's your name?" I said, "Simon Rosh." He said, "Simon Rosh!" And he called out to the whole floor. This is Durban, so the fishing department of the biggest sports shop in the province. It was a big place. "Hey, Oaks, Robin Rosh's lighties here, Simon." It was terribly embarrassing, and I don't know why he did it, but in that moment he did it, and that was testimony to my dad's proficiency as a fisherman. He's a star, absolute legend. And that's the background to this story. It will lend it some credibility, some strength. So you can understand that when my dad retired, first to Hermanus and then to St. Francis Bay, wealthy people in those two towns, my parents are not wealthy, they have little ordinary houses, but those are posh towns, that wealthy people would get hold of my dad. They would hear of him through the grapevine and just ring him up out of the blue, as director of some bank or whatever, and say, "Listen, you bought this boat," and ask him to help them to learn how to be good fishermen, which is not something you can really do, not according to the way my dad learned. It was about living on the beach. My dad can tell you days in advance what's going to happen with the weather and the water, and then you find the fish over there, then they'll move around over there, they'll be feeding there because there's some of that there. And it's not something you can teach someone. Anyway, he would do it. And one of the guys became his firm friend. The guy, I won't mention his name, he's now passed away, was the owner of a very, very, very large, in fact, I won't tell you what the company is, but I will say the largest in Africa, aviation company. And him and a partner, so these just two guys own this company, enormous. And this oak was fishing with my dad one day, and they got onto the subject of SAA. And he said, "Hey, Robbie, I'll tell you a story." He said, "You won't believe this." He said, this has been going on for about the past year. Apparently, the failure rate at the South African Airways Training Center became so bad that they dropped the pass rate. They said, "All right, to be a pilot, if you're black, you only have to score 40%. It's okay. The whiteys have to get whatever. High marks. 50% is not a pass. That's the kind of, it's like brain surgery. If you don't get 80%, you can't be a brain surgeon. It doesn't work that way." A bus full of 300 people flying at 3,000 meters in the air. So somehow word of this leaked out, and the Americans I don't know, the Federal Aviation and Transport Administration, I couldn't tell you, found out about this. And they wrote to the South African government or to SAA, but they wrote to the pertinent entity and said, look, we must tell you that you won't be able to fly in international airspace. You're now breaking, I think it's like called the Treaty of Warsaw or the Convention of Warsaw, something like that. I'm not a fundi on the subject. And the South African government, or whomsoever, wrote back saying, look, this is the new South Africa Rainbow Nation. This is how we do things here. Mind your own business. So the Americans wrote back and said, this is our business. This is flipping international aviation. This is aeroplanes and black boxes and everything related built in the USA. This is a totally interconnected scenario. And just by the way, we will ensure that you will not fly into American airspace with pilots who are winging it on 13.5% for maths. Damn fools. And we will ensure that you get blocked out of other airports. So apparently the South African government was livid. And they wrote back again saying, you have no right, how dare you, disgraceful, blah, 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 blah. The Americans didn't back down. But it just goes to show you. Minore, ad Maius, the situation, the condition is hopeless. The condition of this patient is hopeless. Yeah, he looks okay. But if you examine the toe and the knee and the ankle and the hip and the nose and the ear and the armpit and the elbow, you begin to realize that actually the condition is very, very dire. Between great swathes, hundreds of thousands of square kilometers that go without the international air communications thing for days at a time, to pilots wanting to plow jumbo jets into the freeway. What is it? The R21 that runs past. It runs at the end of the past the end of the landing strip of OR Tambo International Airport, to dropping the pass marks for black pilots to 12, to the absolute collapse of SAA. I'll tell you another quick story. Air Chefs is a subsidiary of, I don't remember exactly how it worked, but whoever owned SAA, that vehicle as a state-owned enterprise, whatever that vehicle was, whether it was literally the Ministry of Transport or a sub-department, however that worked, the same owner owned Air Chefs, as it was explained to me. And Air Chefs provided the onboard meals for SAA. And I thought that I was deceived. I thought that I had a very great opportunity to import meat from Botswana, from the Botswana Meat Commission. The thing was in writing and all, but anyway, so I approached Air Chefs to supply them with beef. And it all went fairly well until there was a bit of a hiccup. I don't know. But in the process, I dealt with the right guy. guy who knew what he was doing. Before he left for New Zealand, and everything went very well. And I asked him, why is he going to New Zealand? And I said to him, man, I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss dealing with you. You talk sense. You know what you're talking about. It's facts and figures, not airy-fairy waffles, rubbish. Dealing with you makes sense. And he said to me, hey, thanks, man, that's good of you. He said, but that's the reason I'm leaving. He said, because I'm dealing with all these other O's. They haven't got a clue what they're doing. And he said, I can't handle it anymore. And he left. And I ended up dealing with his superiors. Sad. Sad, sad, sad. You just can't get anything done well because the people are unwilling to apply their minds to what it is that they're doing. You know, it's not difficult to learn prices. It's not difficult to understand markup and profit. Income equals revenue minus expenditure. You know, I'm giving you various examples. This is another example. That little phrase teaches you everything you need to know. Just those few words about I'm talking about the basics. I'm not saying it makes you a genius Muslim spice trader from the 16th century who could work an abacus faster than I can work this calculator 400 years later. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying basic principles are easy to learn. Hey, these oaks. Shame. Anyway, it became a complete waste of time and fizzled out. But that's that solar system for you. That's that galaxy for you. That's that cosmos. Air chefs, SAA, airports company. I'm sure there's some delightful stories about them. I know somebody very well who would have some terrific stories. Man, the ATNS, and so it goes on. They illustrate the dire condition of the new South Africa Rainbow Nation. Even though, to the casual observer, a lion in Kruger Park and a friendly park ranger and a good cleaner of the bungalow in which you're staying means everything is wonderful. You know, to the person living in Sandton, earning 250,000 Rand a month, who has not been murdered on a farm, has not been raped, who enjoys the luxury, the security of endless alarms and razor wire and patrollers with guns and binoculars and zip-zap devices and laser beams and electrical fences and whatever you. It's easy to shake Cyril Ramaphosa's hand like that, like something out of a cartoon or Saturday morning, Cartoon Network, a Disney show. Yeah, guys, I will never forget, as long as I live, my dad telling me that story as his friend had told him. Man, I giggled like a girl. My dad's a good storyteller. He, especially if he puts on an accent, or if he does it well. He does it with finesse. He can do drama without doing drama. Yeah, I giggled like a girl. Gee, just at the thought of this man. His friend was a very big guy, huge man. My dad is slender. This enormous, you know, these two Laurel and Hardy characters sitting on a boat, on the hatches of a ski boat, a fishing boat, with lions in the water, talking about the pilot of some plane overhead and speculating on how much he got for his flying exam. It was funny. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching this video. Like, share, and subscribe. And if you want to help us to do our work, please visit saitlanders.org, scroll to the bottom, and make a donation. We'd appreciate it. Thank you very much. Goodbye, and God bless all of you.